Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, I feel like this topic today is one that has been on my mind for many, many months now, and I've been trying to find the right person to bring to the podcast to share all the goodies about this. And we're going to talk about Instagram. My special guest today is Alice Benham. She's a digital marketing coach who empowers entrepreneurs to establish effective and sustainable digital strategies for their business. She's passionate about exploring how we can maintain healthier relationships with what we share online and creating conversations about the real side of running a business. And that's why I thought she was the perfect person for this topic. Because you know what? Instagram can be all filtery and perfect, but I think it's better to talk about the real side. She's the host of the podcast, Starting the Conversation, and she loves having conversations about the often unspoken topics, the unsexy stuff like money and mental health and failure of what it's really like to be a business owner. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast today, Alice Benham. Hello, Alice.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here.
It's fun.
I want to simplify what I think are the new rules of Instagram, if in fact there are rules at all. Yeah. And let's dive even deeper in Instagram, what InstaStories is all about and how to use it most effectively. So first and foremost, Instagram. Yeah. Why do you find yourself with your own business gravitated towards that platform in particular rather than any others?
Oh, I flipping love Instagram. I think I've got to a place now in business where it's the only platform I use, as on top of like my website and my podcast, the only social media platform I use is Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that draws me to it is how visual it is. I think it's rare to find another platform which is so focused on how things look and the story that you can tell. For me, is pretty endless. You can do videos, you can do stories, you can do posts, you can do so many things within that. To me, there's so much possibility. And I think I'm drawn to it because it kind of empowers me to show my face a lot and empowers me to actually create human connection as opposed to a tweet or a retweet or sharing something on Facebook. To me, that lacks something that's really important to business owners, which is the human aspect. Mm-hmm. And for me, Instagram just is that. You can't really find, and we'll talk about this in the episode, success, quote unquote, on Instagram without being a human and showing your face. And I think that's what I love about it.
Well, and I think that's really interesting for you to say that you focus on just one platform, being a digital marketing specialist. Yeah. Because I think that a lot of us business owners, we think, or at least I used to think this a lot, I bought into the trap, I need to be everywhere at all times, churning out loads and loads and loads of content. But actually, I've started to really come back and say, well, hang on. I'm going to simplify this. I'm going to actually focus on one or two platforms. So why is that choice for you as well?
Yeah, it's controversial. I have sometimes clients, I'll tell them you should be on this platform that I'm not on, and then they'll obviously challenge that back. I think what I've come to realize is that as business owners, we're told to do 10,000 things at one time. We're meant to host a webinar, we're meant to use Pinterest, we're meant to do this, and that. And I just think when we're doing so many things and when we're spreading ourselves that thin, there's no way that we're doing them all at the best we can. Mm-hmm. And the reality is I could probably do well if I really put my heart into Facebook or really put my heart into Instagram or Twitter, But I think the reality is for me that I'd rather do something really, really well and do something that feels authentic to me as opposed to just do something because my business coach told me to or Instagram and people on Instagram tell me that I should do it. Mm-hmm. So I think my encouragement to all my clients, generally, they come to me saying, I want to do this, and that, and I want to develop this really 360 program that is on every platform everywhere. And I'm like, hold up, what's working for you? Just do that. And I think it's sometimes a bit of a wake-up call for people of like, oh, I don't need to do everything and be everything.
Well, and I think it's also an evolution. So when you are a solopreneur and you have got 80 billion things already on your to-do list, you just can't fit, there's not enough hours in the day and also to sleep at night. So I think once you build an empire and you build a team, if you have 10, 20, 30 people on your team, you could have somebody who is just focused on Twitter, just focused on this.
Totally.
But when you're a small business, I think it's important to focus.
Yeah. And in my bio, I always say not just effective strategies, but effective and sustainable ones. Because like you said, I think we can beat ourselves to the ground. And I've done it myself, trying to sustain 4 different channels and 4 different types of content. And the reality is content is really effective in our businesses in terms of getting clients in, but it doesn't actively make us money. Unless you have sponsors and unless you monetize it, it doesn't make you money. And I think we often do ourselves a kind of disfavor as business owners when we spend all of our time creating and doing And actually, we realized that if a client were to come in, or if we were to get a customer, we don't actually have the space to do it, and we have to drop it. And I think for me, it's about finding where does that kind of, I guess, equilibrium sit between effective and sustainable. Because I don't think you can have one without the other without burning out at some point or having to drop something.
Yeah. So before we dive into Instagram, I'm just really curious to know more about your backstory. So how did you get to be a digital marketing coach? Like, what led you down that path?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a straightforward path at all. So I left school at 17. I was not what you would associate with a school dropout. Got quite good grades, really loved school, was a total nerd. Like, I was that kid in class that would say, "Miss, there was homework due today and you haven't asked for it." Like, I was that awful person. So it was kind of a controversial thing when I said, I want to leave school, I don't want to do this. But I just got to a place mentally where I was finding it too stressful, there was too much pressure. And at the time I was working part-time in events, so I was offered an events role. And I did that for about 9 months in a corporate world, enjoyed it, learned a lot very fast as a 17-year-old about what it looks like to be in the world of work, what it looks like to make a lot of money and also spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that was an experience. And then I got headhunted out of that role. So I was just after my 18th birthday. And I was headhunted for a self-employed role in events. And I said, great, I would love to be self-employed and I love events, amazing. But the problem was it wasn't available for 2 months. So they said, in the interim, we need you to run our social media 1 day a week. And I was like, oh, I guess I quite like social media personally, so I'll do that. And then after 2 months, I'll drop it and do the event stuff. And I started it. And within the 2 months, I had picked up other clients and kind of built my portfolio unintentionally. I just can't really say no. So that's what really got me there. And then when the end of the 2 months came around and they said, hey, here's the events job. Are you ready to transition? I was like, well, actually, no, I found a job that I really love. So at the time I was a social media manager. So I was on retainers. I was running 10, 20 charities, big corporate social media accounts. I was very successful, quote unquote, to other people. I made quite a bit of money in my perspective of being that young. And then, well, basically within that, what people didn't see is that I was overworking myself. So I was doing 12-hour days. I was traveling Monday to Friday, not anywhere nice like Bora Bora, but like, no offense, like Nottingham, Birmingham, all the Midlands. So it wasn't the most glamorous of lives. And I lasted about 9 months of doing that before I just burnt out. Ended up having to take 6 months off of work. Long story short, dealt with depression and anxiety and kind of had to rebuild my business from stage one because I realized that I'd built something that didn't give me any joy. And I loved the social media, but I didn't love how I was doing it. So I kind of went through this process of, well, what do I want my work to look like? I still wanted to be self-employed. And I thought, I love the part where people get that moment where they go, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense. Now I can go and do that. And it was the empowerment part of what I did that I loved. It wasn't the doing. So that's when I kind of came up with this role of, I wanted to be an educator, but I didn't want to sell courses. So I thought, I'll do coaching and I'll be a one-on-one coach. And it really just grew from there. So I realized that I wanted to educate rather than do. And then I realized that I really wanted to work with small businesses that are a lot more personal and kind of human. So I transitioned that. Wasn't an easy transition. I've actually just recorded a podcast episode all about the basically 6 months after that where I had no clients and had to kind of dig deep. But that's kind of, long story short, how it's got me here today. I feel like I talked a lot there and I apologize.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that what you said, and I'm sure there's quite a few people that are listening right now that are nodding their head of like, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you go through that rocky period of like, when you're just starting to go out on your own, you're like, oh my gosh, there's not a steady paycheck coming in every 2 weeks from somebody. There's not insurance. There's not whatever. That, I mean, every single entrepreneur that is listening to this episode right now is going, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, like it's not something that's usually spoken about out loud or shown. So this is the thing, Instagram.
Yeah.
I have a love-hate relationship with it.
I think you do too.
You know, so because I love to use InstaStories. I love peeling back the Wizard of Oz curtain and showing people, you know, just my everyday life, right? What I hate about it is the fact that it is so easy to fall down the rabbit hole of comparison.
Yep.
Of like going, oh my gosh, look at her. Like she seems to have blah, 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 blah. And why does she have 80 bazillion followers? And why is da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And that's a trap, obviously.
Totally.
The comparison trap is real. But I think this is what I want to ask you, first and foremost. Why Instagram for your business? Why do you personally like it so much?
There would be a lot of reasons, but I think the big one would be I am a one-girl band. I'm a personal business. It's me. I don't have a team. I don't have anyone else. I'm an I business, not a we business.
Yeah.
And Instagram, like I said earlier, is the place where really you show up best when you show your face and when you connect as a human. And I think I just realized that the easiest way where I wouldn't have to put in work to present myself in a certain way or to try and get my message out there in the right way was using Instagram because it's so visual. I love being creative with visuals. I love the balance of kind of that, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is the balance of like, when is it curated and when is it just going kind of down that unhealthy path of not quite being okay. And also I just love Instagram. I think it's the place to be. If you're a small business owner, I think Instagram is easily the fastest growing and probably most kind of, I think you get the best connection and the best engagement there. I've definitely found that I've made lifelong friends and business partners, and I've found people that I could see myself doing life with and doing my business with through Instagram. And I don't think I could say that for any other platform.
Yeah. And with your Instagram feed in particular, it is beautiful. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring you on because you're a one-woman show. Like, I'm really curious, like, how are you making it so beautiful? So we're going to dive into, and I really hope that you'll share, like, what are the actual tools you're using right now? And I encourage everybody that's listening to this episode, go click on the show notes right now. Click on the link to Alice's Instagram feed. Look at her InstaStories. You will see a fundamental difference in how you communicate. And I think that what I think you're really, really good at, and I know you're British and so you're going to be modest about this, but I'm just going to toot your horn, is that you're really good at storytelling, like genuine storytelling of who you are as a person and your life and how you work with your clients.
Yeah.
So well done, you.
Thank you. I think that, for even going back to the point, like I think that's why I use Instagram because it's literally made for storytelling.
Yes.
And I think a story comes together when you have a combination of what you can see and what you can read. And I think Instagram, is that perfect balance.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, you've probably clicked already on her link. You probably surfed over to Instagram to watch her Insta stories at this point, and you're going, okay, yeah, Mary, the girl knows what she's doing. So talk us through this. When you post things to Insta stories, I see a lot of really beautiful cinematic videos and, picture in picture and all sorts of things. How are you doing this?
Literally one app.
Yes.
I do not no, it's good for you if you can put the effort into it, but to me, Instagram stories is about showing up as a real person. And I think it is a balance between like the reason that I put so much work into them is so people like you will see that style and it's me instantly. What I didn't want to do is just fit in with what everyone else is doing and create these generic stories.
Yeah.
So the only app I use is Unfold, literally Unfold, Unfold. And what it allows you to do is to put 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, however many pictures you want into one space. So you can change the background color, you can make it kind of specific to your branding. And what I think it allows you to do is to create stories that are more than just the picture. Because I think the way that Instagram does it, where the story fits the whole page and any writing you want to do is on top.
Yeah.
What that does is the writing's kind of an add-on. And if you want to read it, you do. And if you want to look at the GIFs, you do. But really your focus is on that picture. But what Unfold does for me is give me this whole nother level of kind of control over how people take in what I'm saying, because I can put a picture in the corner and a video in the other corner and a big caption in the middle. And almost, I think you have a lot more power to manipulate in a good way how people are taking in what you're telling, which to me is why it's so easy to tell a story, because it allows me to give context and it allows me to tell the backstory and kind of give people this 360 view, as opposed to just you can see what I'm doing or you can hear what I'm doing. I try and give them that kind of whole experience.
And so with Unfold, are you shooting all this like days and weeks in advance? Are you shooting it as the day? I mean, is it complicated? All of that.
So that's how I find that balance between like, I don't want to take stories too professional. Some people do that and that works for them. But to me, the thing that I know people love about my stories, as opposed to isn't necessarily the aesthetic, it's what I'm known for, it's what people like. But what they keep coming back for is the story that I'm telling and what I'm saying. So I shoot all of it live. I might say record 3 facial talking videos in the morning, and then I won't upload them to mid-morning because I just haven't had the time to put it through. Because obviously it does add another step to it. I don't take something and instantly put it up. It maybe takes me 5 minutes to put it in the app and then write some things and draw some things and then put it up.
Yeah.
But it's all live, unless I'm sharing like a professional picture, but that's...
Are you filtering the videos in the app, or is it the filter? Because you have a very clean, streamlined, filtered look, right?
Yeah, so I just filter it the second that I take it in the app. So that's another thing that I do. I think really the reason that I use the app alongside how good it is for storytelling is that it creates association with my followers. So I use exactly the same fonts, exactly the same colors, exactly the same filter, and exactly the same framing, so that when anyone sees any of those elements, it kind of creates that brand recognition.
Right. That's the style guide, right? So, and that's something that I teach our clients as well, but I think it's something that we miss if you don't realize, because it's like, what are your brand's colors? What is the typography that is, aligned to your brand? And what does that look and feel, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing is like in your Instagram feed itself, if you're using filters there, use the same one. Like don't just, go from one to the other, because your grid is never going to look like it all fits in one family, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what people love about stories is that the grid, definitely these days, and I feel this as well, I hardly ever post on my grid because there's a lot of pressure. It feels too permanent. It feels like it's constantly there. If it doesn't get enough likes or the picture doesn't fit with the feed, that's there forever for everyone to see. Whereas I think the freedom that we get with stories is that unless you want them to stay on your highlights, they're going to disappear. And I think that's where I'm having so many conversations surrounding stories, is that because they've arrived as this thing of, share your everyday, show the behind the scenes, show what's raw. I think as business owners, we've taken that as an opportunity to just share whatever we want. It's like we throw up on our stories, and it's like, I'm just going to share everything I'm doing because Instagram's giving me a place to do that. And I think that's what made them so popular. But now, because they're so popular, what we need to do as business owners is think, how can I use this a bit more strategically?
Right.
And I think it is shifting. I think for me, my stories is what grows my Instagram. My feed doesn't do that. So my focus is on my stories. And I think business owners also need to make that decision of, if you get more engagement on your stories, that's probably telling you something that you should get a bit intentional, I guess, listen to this episode and do something about how you're using them. Because I think otherwise they just become a place that we talk about our dogs or what we're eating, which is great. But I think we have to supplement that with some effective stuff as well.
Yes. And so we stopped, we were following hard and fast rules. I'm using air quotes here, that we thought, we need to post every single day at a very strategic time on the grid of Instagram. And what happened was that because people weren't engaging with our content as much, and I felt like this is all genius. I'm writing all this amazing stuff and no one was liking it. I was like, and it's because the Instagram, when people don't like your stuff, then the next time you post, the algorithms push it down and down and down. So it's like you're creating stuff that nobody is seeing. And that when we move to posting every 3 days, every 4 days, maybe every once a week, our engagement went straight up the roof, on likes and comments and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, if those people are not contacting you and buying your products and services, what's the point?
I know. And I say that to people. They say, I've got this many followers, I get this many likes, and I'm like, does that make you any money?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's why numbers are slightly irrelevant to me. I think the way that Instagram's shifting, and I've actually, I made a resolution in September. I was like, I am going to refuse to talk about the Instagram algorithm because I'm going to probably offend some people here. I think it's an excuse. I think it's something we use to say, this is why this isn't working because the algorithm, and darn the algorithm. No, I think what the algorithm just does is challenge us to go for quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way, like yourself has experienced, in terms of actually people want a story and people want depth and people want connection. We don't want constant streams of whatever. We want a post that really connects with us. And I think stories is the same thing. What was your original question? I totally just went off in a tangent in my head.
It's okay. So back to the tools that you're using to make your InstaStories so beautiful. So unfolds in the app. Are you using your phone to shoot the video, or are you using a fancy video camera?
So very rarely will I use a fancy video camera. Anytime I go on a holiday, I create a highlights-ish video of that holiday, and that's with a fancy camera. So that would be the only time that I would ever shoot stories with it. I have tried doing that before. I've tried using my big camera to do that.
Yeah.
But to me, there's so much production in that. I have to export it. I have to get it all. Whereas to me, if I do it on my phone, I think our phones are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And again, I think sometimes that's an excuse where we say, my phone's not good enough. But the reality is, if you can take a picture or a video, then you can tell a story.
Yeah.
So I literally don't use anything other than Unfold.
Can you tell us what kind of phone you have and what kind of video camera you have as well? Yes. Literally, if somebody's listening, you're going, I want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have an iPhone 8 Plus, which is a good phone, I guess. I paid a lot of money for it, so I hope it's good.
Yeah.
And then to shoot anything you'll see in my Instagram TV, I use Well, actually, it's difficult. This can be annoying here. All of the past videos are with a Canon 60 with a Sigma 35, but everything in the future and the camera that I would point people towards would be the Sony A7 Mark III with a Sigma 35.
Great. So we'll put the links down below for all of those, the equipment for people. Now, I want to be very clear, like you just said, and reiterate. If you are a geek and you love equipment and you're just all about wanting to try stuff, go for it. Go down the path, but you don't need it, right?
No, not at all. I think the times that I use my big fancy camera is fun, but like you said a minute ago, none of those videos and none of that content makes me money. It's the stuff that I shoot with my phone, and very often, which is funny, the things that are completely irrelevant. I'll talk about the color of Fanta. I did this recently on my stories, and that gets 40 or 50 replies. And then I talk about my newest business thing and it gets like 2 replies.
So the thing that I think is so funny is recently you were talking about 2 things that you are obsessed with, which are your lashes and your teeth.
Yes.
These are the things that I know about you. And since you've
stuck
told
in your
me,
head, isn't it?
It has. It's totally stuck in my head because she did this whole like InstaStories about like, this is how I use activated charcoal to brush my teeth. And I just thought it was the funniest thing. But I also was like, dang, she's got some nice white teeth. I have started using activated charcoal because of you. Thanks,
Influence.
Alice. I know.
There we go.
So this is what's so funny is that I think there is an interesting, delicate balance between how much you share about you personally and how much you share about your business.
Yes.
But I think it's also really what makes me, build that know, like, and trust. And, it's like, oh, she and I have this common thing where we have white teeth and we use activated charcoal.
Yeah.
It's just a silly thing. So encouraging businesses to not keep it so stiff and businessy and like, punching people in the face saying, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, right?
Because people buy from people.
Yeah.
And I think what I've realized is that when I've used my Instagram in a way that is literally showing like the most ridiculous personal things about me, and that we will probably talk about the balance that I have between, because I don't just share everything. There's a lot of things that I don't share, but I'm very intentional about the fact that I share stuff that I know if someone else posted it, I would go, oh my gosh, me too. And I think very often it's that stuff that grabs people and grabs their attention and gets them engaged in what I'm showing, so that when I post something about an upcoming project or a podcast episode or whatever, they're engaged to receive that.
Right.
I think very often it's that, I mean, we all know it now, we serve before we sell. And I think Instagram is the same way. And I think serving on Instagram doesn't always look like giving out free tips or saying, here's a blog that I wrote, which is really helpful for you. I think serving on Instagram can be talking about what you're eating for dinner or the struggle that you've had that day or the teeth whitening stuff that you use, because that was way more engaging and connected me to so many more people than any other kind of value adding thing I've posted.
So what is the balance in your mind?
Goodness, I think it's different for everyone. It's a real conversation that I end up having with all of my clients of where are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
Because I think we can overhear this message of you need to share yourself. You are what people love. People love personal content, and that's very true. But I think we have to put ourselves first as business owners and not leverage our lives as content.
Yeah.
I've definitely had moments where I've had a really unhealthy relationship with what I've posted, and I've had something go wrong in my life, even something very mediocre like being pulled over by the police, not for anything serious, but for something silly, or like having a real mistake happen in my business. And the first thing that I thought of was, this is going to make such good content.
Yeah.
And it was in those moments of reflection that I realized that's a really unhealthy relationship to have.
Right.
I think it's something I always say to people when they're thinking about, what's my boundary? I think it's a conversation for each of us to have. But something that's really helped me is thinking about whether something is a scar or a wound, which I think I heard on Jenna Kutcher's Gold Digger podcast, I think, just to give credit to where I heard it, it's not my phrase. Yeah. Particularly when thinking about sharing about a big life event or something that's really happened in your life recently, if you want to talk about your mental health, I think in order to and make sure it has the best impact on us and isn't just kind of putting us out there to all this response that it could get back, I think you have to ask yourself, is this something that's a wound and something that I'm okay with people prodding at and talking about and maybe questioning? Or is this a scar? The other way around, is this a wound? And if people prod at it and talk about it and question it, it's going to really hurt me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a question we all need to ask anytime we go to post something, because the reality is the really difficult thing is that vulnerability gets engagement. And I think we get a bit messed up when we begin to make that kind of direct correlation and just continually post vulnerable stuff for the sake of engagement, because I think then we just lose the part of us that is protecting us, but also protecting our audience. I think we have to be careful about what we share and how that impacts other people. So for me, I've just found my imbalance. I don't share any of my friends. You won't see anything about my family on there. People don't know where I live. I don't share what I do at the weekends. I've just had to create these really strong boundaries to make sure that I'm not getting to a position where my life becomes more about Instagram than it does about my life.
Right. And I think that that's also a very good point in when you are living your life and you notice the point where you're like, oh, could you just take that picture again? Because I don't know if the lighting was right. And you're stopping actual in real life moments to get the pretty picture so that you can post it later. That's when you start to notice it's maybe an unhealthy relationship.
Which to me, using the Unfold app and never shooting things and instantly putting them up helps me to be in the moment. Because I'm not, the same thing with when I take my big camera out as opposed to my phone, I shoot it and then I put it in my pocket and I come and look at it and think about it and process it and post it later when I've made space.
Yeah.
And I'm really conscious not to be, I think people assume because I'm on Instagram a lot, if they hang out with me, I'm going to spend my whole time Instagramming them. But the reality is that's just not what I do. I'm very intentional, or at least I try to, like you said, still kind of live life in real time and have my content take a back seat.
Yeah.
But I think putting a bit more production value into what you do is a good way of creating that boundary, because there's no way that I can instantly put a photo up because it has to go through a process.
So just out of curiosity, what is your opinion on people who post pictures of themselves in their underwear or pictures of themselves that, in very intimate ways?
Yeah.
I've seen it done, beautifully. And I've also seen it done like, I don't know if I understand this. What is your personal take? Are you going to be showing up in your underwear anytime soon on your Instagram
I
feed?
think my parents would have a heart attack
Mine
if I
would
ever
too.
did that. I think with everything, it's understanding what's the purpose of this and what's the big picture of it. If that's something that's going to really connect to your followers and is going to really connect them to your message and your brand and you feel comfortable with it, go for it, great.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing it because you know that's what gets engagement or because you think that that's going to, being vulnerable is going to give you something in return from your followers, I think that's when you have to question it.
Right.
I think everyone has their own boundaries of what's okay and what's not. You'll find people who don't want to have any production value in their Instagram and everything wants to feel raw, and you'll see people that show absolutely everything, but it's always through a filter. And I think there's no wrong or right. It's figuring out your own boundary. But I think as a follower and a consumer, you can tell when something doesn't feel true for them.
Yeah.
And I think the second you can tell that someone's posting something for the sake of something other than just telling their story, I think we switch off.
Right.
And I definitely find myself kind of gravitating towards people in terms of Instagram who I know when I meet them in person are the exact same. And that's the thing I think we all have to think about is what I'm sharing true to me? Because I think if it's not, your followers can tell. And ultimately, you don't find joy in it. If you're literally just showing up naked for the sake of engagement, that's pretty rough.
Yeah. So you recently did a experiment, like an airbrushing experiment in your Instagram grid. And I want to know set us up for us. Tell us about the experiment itself and what you really, really learned in that process about personal branding, either for yourself or for your clients.
Okay, so I'll give you a bit of an inside info that I don't think I've shared anywhere else. My boyfriend and I were broken up at the time, and we were on a holiday with his family. His family live in another country, in Dubai, and we were in Dubai doing like couples therapy. So we're there, like I can't share any of that. At the time, that was a wound for me, and I was like, I can't talk. No one knew that we'd broken up. No one knew that we were trying to get back together. I was like, I can't share this. I need to talk about something else. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself a project. And I was like, I'm in Dubai, a place which is famously known for being literally a place where rich people just played a real life game of Sims. Dubai is very plastic and shiny. And I was like, I want to do something that challenges that and that kind of explores the balance with that. And I spent a few days thinking about it, and I was kind of discussing it with my boyfriend, who I'm now back together with, so no one needs to worry about that one. But I just realized, I was like, I want to do something which really challenges the way that people interact with my content and also challenges the way that I interact with my content myself. So I came up with this idea that I was going to post 2 or 3 posts, it ended up being 3, which were like intentionally as far from the truth as they could be. Obviously at the time we were going through some really rough stuff, and it wasn't the shiny, exciting holiday that I was making it look like. But I put these 3 posts out there which were just completely inaccurate. One was me in a gym, and my boyfriend's a photographer, which is how I have access to great gear and kind of great skills. And he edited it for me to have like abs and to be like 2 or 3 sizes smaller than I am and make me look tanned and whiten my teeth. First of all, that was a weird experience. The moment I looked at an airbrush photo of myself, I was like, that's something I need to process. And then the other 2 photos were, one of them was just like completely inaccurate. We've never been to that place. And one was just telling a completely wrong story. And what I wanted to explore was the response that would get. I wanted to know whether people would realize anything was up. I wanted to know whether people would engage with it in the way that I expected them to, which they did. And I also wanted to know how I would feel doing it, because I think when we talk about Instagram versus reality, we talk a lot about the responsibility that creators have on what they post, which I think is good. We all have a responsibility to post stuff that is going to have a good impact. But I think what we don't always acknowledge is the responsibility on us as consumers, because if you follow and have followers, which I'm sure we all do, you're both of those things. And I think we're very quick to fire judgment at someone who posts something that's very curated and say, that's not real, you're damaging me, you're giving this person self-comparison issues. But I don't think we always acknowledge that we play a part in how we interact with other people's content. Almost, I guess, taking things with a pinch of salt and realizing that everything we see is in some way curated.
Yeah.
So I guess my way of exploring that was just taking it to an extreme.
So how did people engage to the content?
Interestingly, well, not interestingly, I think you would expect the same. It's probably the most liked things that I've had in the last 6 months, which was kind of disheartening. I think I was hoping that my audience was so in tune with my authentic message that this really polished perspective they wouldn't get or they would respond to. But like, the reality is that people loved it. They got a lot of likes. People really engaged with it. It got to the end. By the third post, I had to turn off the comments because I just couldn't. I felt so uncomfortable knowing that what I was putting out there, A, wasn't true. And I think that's when you know you're really connected with your message, is when you have that gut feeling of like, this doesn't feel right. But I also felt really uncomfortable knowing that what I was posting could be the object of someone else's comparison. So when I ended up not really being able to be on Instagram for that week. I just would post them and then kind of run away from my phone because I couldn't face what was going on. Obviously told my family what was going on, so they didn't think that I'd suddenly grown abs, because I definitely didn't. And then I kind of told people the story. So I'd been filming the whole process and recording my process of it and the kind of the journey I was going on, and then put it up. And the response to that was exactly what I hoped for. It just created conversation.
Yes.
And people, it was difficult. People opened up about what those posts had done for them. 2 or 3 people told me that they joined a gym after they saw a picture of my abs. And that for me was a moment when I was like, I completely underestimated, because I only have 1,000 and something followers. I was like, of course I'm not going to have that much big of an impact.
Right.
But I was totally blown away by like, oh my goodness, we are so responsible for what we put out there. And that was a really interesting experience. I'm really glad I did it, because I don't think I've seen it done before. I think I was very careful about how I toyed with that idea of reality versus fake.
Yeah.
Because I have clients who you would look at their Instagram feed and it looks exactly like my experiment the whole way through. But the reality is their story is different. And people follow them for the curated photos and for that kind of lifestyle-esque stuff. But I just knew for me that wasn't something I want to do. So I think what it forced me to do was create those really strong boundaries of what am I comfortable posting, and also to understand the impact that I would have. Because if you look at my feed, you've obviously said I'm very, I guess, authentic and I do storytelling, but if you look at my feed without clicking on anything, the photos are very curated, they're professionally taken, they're professionally edited. And I think what I concluded from that is that if I wanted to keep posting those pictures, which I love, I had to balance it with captions that were real and captions that kind of told the truth and were authentic.
Yeah.
And since that, I haven't posted as often, but the posts that I've done have been a lot more kind of raw, and I think that's the balance that I concluded from it.
Yeah. And I think it's really fascinating. I think, yes, I saw the conversation post after you posted those, and I thought that was really, really good, because it's peeling the curtain back again and really saying like, this is what actually is happening, right?
Yeah.
And it just sort of wakes people up and go, oh, right, okay. Because we so passively consume Instagram.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
I think for myself, and I'm sure loads of people listening, it's like you go to Instagram because you're like, oh, I got 5 minutes before my meeting starts. And so you just go mindlessly scrolling, right? And that mindlessly scrolling is subconsciously ingraining in your brain,
Yeah.
you know? So the girls that said, oh, I joined a gym afterwards, who knows? Maybe there was a moment in there where they're just like, oh my God, I'm a hot mess. I need to join a gym. Look at how great Alice is in her life, blah, blah, blah. So yes, I think the most important thing that you said there was just realizing the impact that you have on what you post out. Is this driving, you know, a purpose forward? Like, why are you posting this? I think is the most important question to ask. So We have to wrap up, sadly. But I encourage everybody to definitely take a look at Alice's Instagram, see how she's using InstaStories as well as her main grid. But I want to ask a few questions before we wrap up.
Go for it.
First and foremost, as a digital marketing expert yourself, how do you think it's evolving? Where do you think Instagram or social media is headed in the next 5 years, if you had a crystal ball in front of you?
I think I can only really answer for small businesses.
Yeah.
That's my field. That's what I am. That's what I know. I think it's heading in the direction that we're all being forced to show our faces, whatever way that looks like. I don't literally always mean show your face and talk to a camera, but I think what businesses are being pushed to do if they want to engage with their followers and actually have a relationship with them. I think what we're realizing is that there's far more stuff that's going to be happening before a sale. I think that process is getting longer. It's no longer a customer has a need, a business has a solution to that, they buy it, conversation over. I think it's becoming a whole story.
Right.
There's a whole process now that, particularly with small businesses, people want to go on in understanding the ethics of the business and feeling like they know them and getting connected to them. And then they might make a purchase, but then they want to stay connected afterwards. And I think what small businesses are going to be doing over the next 5 years is just becoming less of a place where people are given call to actions and able to buy, and more of a place where people get connected.
Yeah.
And I think if small businesses want to kind of have longevity to their digital marketing, they've got to go in that direction of understanding that it's more about a relationship than it is about marketing or sales funnels or ads or any of those things.
Yeah. I also believe that social media is not the end game. It is the vehicle that takes you from point A to point B to actual real life connections, communications, collaborations, partnerships. I mean, you and I met online and now here we are face to face recording this podcast. I mean, I think that's how you use it well.
Totally.
Because when you just think, oh, well, I need to get 20,000 followers on Instagram and then I will be successful, it's not really the right place to focus.
Yeah. And I think we'll be, just to add one on the end there, going in the direction of valuing the quality of the engagement we get over the numbers. I think that's already a transition we're seeing.
Yeah.
But I think that will be a big thing, is that it will no longer be a number game, but it will be about who you're engaging with and the quality of that connection, I think. So I think the businesses that are going to have longevity are the ones that are realizing that now.
Yeah.
And it will be...
Well, and I think I've said this on previous episodes, but one definite thing that's working for me right now on Instagram is, rather than doing the mindless, putting comments on people's grids of like, pretty photo, nice, blah, 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 nice work, which is all like, there's so many bots out there that do that and it just feels inauthentic already. I actually slide over to people's DMs and have conversations with them there. So if I see something on InstaStories that I'm like, oh, wow, Alice, you're using activated charcoal? What? I'll just say it in a direct message to you. We have a conversation and it's not in a weird, creepy, salesy kind of way. And there's no necessarily like manipulative strategy per se in my head. It's just like, oh yeah, you're a human. I'm a human. Like, let's just talk over here on that way. And that builds that communication, which builds all the other stuff. So
Totally.
Yeah. So a couple of questions that I like to ask everybody that comes on to our podcast. First and foremost, is there one book or maybe blog that you're reading these days that is either inspiring you or maybe challenging you a bit?
Yes, I'm a total bookworm, so I read about a book every few days because I'm just obsessed.
Yeah.
The book that I've just finished that I can't really get out of my head is by Seth Godin, I believe, and it's called Tribes.
Yes.
I just had to swallow that. And what it does, it's a book basically challenging the idea of leadership and the idea that traditionally we see people as leaders and followers, but actually moving in a direction that leadership is more about kind of, I guess, leading from the back and more about influence. And I love bringing it back to the sense of social media and digital marketing and thinking about how actually we're all influencers and considering what we do, even down to like psychologically, to create that influence and to grow our tribe. So that would be my it's a really good business book, but it's completely changed my perspective on all my relationships.
Yeah, and Seth's books, I mean, all of them are nice, quick, easy reads. So it's one to definitely take a look at.
Sure.
So if there is one person in your circle or network that you think we should interview on the podcast, who would that be and why?
Okay, I have this girl that I'm a bit obsessed with at the moment, and she'll probably listen to this and laugh at me because I talk about her a lot. She's called Sapphire. She's the leader of, so in the UK we have, well, it's not UK based, but what Sapphire does is she runs something called The Coven, which isn't actually about witches, but it's just kind of themed around that. And what The Coven is, it's an online membership platform for female identifying entrepreneurs. And she is incredible. She has already run a really successful flower business, and now she's going into The Coven and what she's doing. Then it launched a few months ago. I can honestly tell you that since joining her membership platform, which I think most people think membership platforms are hundreds or thousands a month, I pay £20 a month to be a part of her membership platform. I get accountability calls. I get access to industry experts. She gives out a ton of stuff. And since being in that group, surrounded by women who are just cheering each other on, I can tell you that my business has almost doubled in terms of revenue. And that's been 3 months of it. So I think she's amazing. Everything she does kind of is incredible. She has a lot of stories of where things have failed. So I love her for that. She's very authentic and tells really true stories. So she would be my big fan of her.
Yeah, Sapphire's been on my radar for the last couple of months as well, just because I'm so intrigued by her. And, you know, she's not more than maybe 25, 26 years old.
Yeah.
Like, she's fairly young, too. So I will definitely reach out to her and get her on the podcast soon. So just a reminder to you guys, you can find Alice Benham online on Instagram. Alice_Benham is your handle on Instagram. You can click the links in the show notes as well. Alice has got a free Instagram story challenge that's coming up soon. So can you tell us a little bit quickly about that?
What it is, it's taking people on a process from seeing Instagram stories just as an accessory in their digital marketing to actually using them really effectively and really intentionally. So a lot of what we've talked about in the episode, it will be that, but put into action. So it's kind of still in the stage of figuring it out, but what it's going to be is a 5-week challenge. Challenge is the best word I can think of without it sounding too odd.
Yeah.
And it'll be a weekly email and a weekly Instagram live where there'll be a prompt and almost a topic that I'll talk people through that will just get people one step closer to, like I have in my business, Instagram stories being a real fundamental part of what they do. And not just creating stories that are engaging, but like we said, creating stories that actually are going to impact the bottom line of their business. So that's what I've got. I'm actually really excited to do that. It's going to be free. I'm just going to encourage everyone to get involved in whatever way they can, whether they just want to get the emails or want to listen in on the lives. That would be my big, I'm really excited to have that coming up and excited for what it does for people. There's nothing I love more than when people are like, oh my gosh, it actually worked. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, you just have to experiment and try something new.
Yeah.
So click on the link in the show notes and that you'll get access to that challenge and all the details on how to sign up for it.
Amazing.
Our people right now are all over the world doing the Do the Thing challenge with the Simplifiers. And the Do the Thing challenge is all about just get up off your butt and just do the thing.
Love it.
So in your business, whether that is going and closing that sales deal or making that big scary call or setting your goals so that you can finish strong in 2018. So we talk a lot about do the thing around here on this podcast, especially. What's one thing, in your opinion, that our listeners could do today when it comes to Instagram based on our conversation?
I say this would be my answer anytime anyone asks me this, is go onto your Instagram stories and do 5, 6, 7 stories which introduces yourself. I think we often assume that audiences know us, and I think there's a real power in an introduction. Think about it as a conversation. You wouldn't just go into the big meaty sales talk, or you wouldn't go into it just talking about what you do. You would tell them who you are first. So it's something I've done in my business. I planned it out. I kind of used the app Unfold. You can go and look at it. It's like one of my highlights if you want a bit of inspiration. But I would say go on, tell people who you are, where you're from, tell them more about yourself, tell them more about your passions, tell them about things they might not know about you, so that they can almost have that initial introduction and so that they get so much more context to everything that you're going to share off the back of it. And then the amazing thing on Instagram is you can then save it to your feed, to your highlights, so that any new followers, anyone that's kind of checking out your page can just read that and get that like snapshot introduction where they're like, oh my gosh, in 10 seconds, I know almost everything there is to know about you. So I'm going to follow because I love that. So that would be my just go and do it thing.
Do the thing, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that tip there. So my last question for you is this. Somebody somewhere in the world is listening to this episode and she's feeling really, really inspired by all the ideas and thinking, maybe I could use Instagram in a different way and have a better relationship with it. But maybe she's just had a massive failure in her life, either personally or professionally. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her?
Oh gosh, big question. I'd probably say I completely relate. I think a lot of us don't share those things that are going on. I think I would just encourage them that it sounds really, really corny, but it does get better and absolutely everyone experiences something of that kind. And I think don't underestimate the power of when you're ready, showing up in that and using that almost as a springboard for where you want to go and what you want to do. And also the power of just reaching out to other people. When I was going through kind of my breakup earlier this year that I talked about, I remember reaching out to some people that I'd met on Instagram thinking, is this really weird? Are we really friends? But in that connection, I just deepened my relationship with them and realized that they weren't just accounts, they weren't just handles, they weren't just numbers. Those were actual real life people. So yeah, I would just encourage you reach out and know that everyone else is probably dealing with something very similar or has, so you're not alone.
Alice, thank you so much for being on the
It's all
podcast
right.
today.
Thank you for having me. I've absolutely loved being on the other end of, usually I'm interviewing, so it's quite nice just to chat for a bit.
Thanks again.